Hey, how you guys doing? Xavier, CRC. This is going to be the start of a new series, I guess you can call it. Don't really have a title for it just yet, but essentially the premise of it is going to be going over past real estate deals, both unsuccessful and the successful ones, so that we can highlight and show, what we learned from each deal. Because at this point, at the day of recording, we've done a few hundred deals easily. We also don't have a few hundred properties, so it goes to show you like the percentage ratio between, just because we're out there putting out contracts and going through all this process doesn't mean that we always close on the property. There's a lot that goes into making a real estate deal. There's a lot that goes into making sure that you actually have a good real estate investment. So this episode is going to be the first in a long line of real estate deal videos. Hopefully you guys get something from it. All right, so first deal that we're going to cover. This one was actually from about 2 years ago. Street address 11573 Persimmon Street out in Willis, Texas. Now, on the surface, this met all of our prerequisites, right? It was a new build. There were a lot of other new built homes going up in the area. We had already seen by the property history that these new built homes were going up in value, and there was what at least appeared to be a very strong market for rentals. So for us in our investment strategy, this seemed like a hit out of the park. If you don't have the patience to wait to the end of the video, I can tell you right now, we did not end up getting this property. And it wasn't for the lack of trying. It was literally some of the craziest stuff, at least up until that point, because since we've had crazier things happen. But up until that point, it was probably the most craziest situation we had ever had to deal with concerning the new home. Now, one of the first red flags should have been the builder contract. Now, I can't speak for everywhere else because we do all of our investing in real estate investing in the state of Texas. So I can't speak for any other state. But I can say that at the time, 2 years ago, when we were just starting our real estate investing, this builder contract was not the norm. I don't know if this builder had a ton of bad experiences. I don't know if this guy was dealing with a ton of bad buyers and just had a lot of people drop out. But this contract was written like Fort Knox. It was pretty concerning. It basically took every single possible instance of liability off of the builder while still holding us as the buyers to the utmost standard. Basically, this contract was written up so that there was no definite closing date, so that just in case there were any delays or anything like that, that the builder would be fine and we would still not have an avenue to back out, which may not mean a lot to you guys right now, but listen, man, time is money and money is time, right? And when you're saving up for real estate, like life still happens. Life still happens. Emergencies can happen. And so that money that you've been sitting on that you want to save and invest, well, you end up holding on to it for longer than you intended. And then something just happens. It's just the way it works. Something just happens. And then you end up having to pull out of that pot. And now you may not have the necessary funds. It starts to change your whole situation. You basically had it set up so there was no set time for the closing on their side, on the builder side. Also, we had to pay an astronomical amount of option money and earnest money. For those of you who don't know what option money and earnest money is, basically in like simple layman's terms. All right, so if you're out there and you're some super real estate guru, don't knock me. All right, I'm not gonna say this like verbatim for what it is, but essentially option money is the money that you put up in a real estate deal that gives you the option or the opportunity to back out of the deal in a certain amount of time for really no specified reason whatsoever. Typically, at least again here in Texas, the way we operate, we typically put down, $50 to $100 for option money. And then for earnest money is kind of like a show of goodwill that, you're actually serious and you kind of have the financial resources necessary to purchase the property. And typically, that's about 1%. Well, this builder was what's the best way? He was a motherfucker and a half. Let's just put it that way. He wrote it up. He wrote this contract up so that there was no earnest money. It wasn't earnest money. So here's what happens, right? Now we still had to pay a 1% fee that was like earnest money. It was $13.50, but it wasn't earnest money. It was like a builder fee that, if we closed on the property, would count towards our down payment on the property. But if we backed out of the property, even with the option period, we couldn't get that money back because it wasn't earnest money. It was a fee to the builder for basically going under contract and having the builder take the house off the market. I'll tell you right now, even with how tight the real estate market is at the time of recording this video, do not ever sign a bullshit builder contract like that. That is some nonsense. And as you guys can pretty much already see, we end up losing out on our $13.50. And it wasn't our fault. Listen, it only started from there. These were some of the red flags. But man, this thing has so much stuff that we liked. Like, not only was it new, not only was, it met a lot of our tick marks, strong rental market, but you got all appliances included. And when I say all appliances, I mean all kitchen stuff. You got a new fridge. They gave us a washer and dryer. Like, basically, it was a 2-2 new build. And basically, this property was essentially tenant ready. There was nothing that we would have to do except for get a property manager and have the property listed and get a tenant in there and start cash flowing. Or so we thought. So, we talked over the whole stipulation of the contract. We turned in all of our monies, etc. And so we start kind of going down the path of closing. And while we were in the process of closing, it ended up coming out from the builder. By the way, this was not listed on the property listing, on the MLS and everything like that. But it ended up coming out that the property was in a special flood zone. Now, a lot of you out there, this may not mean much. For investors out there, new or seasoned, if you have any experience dealing with flood zone properties, this actually means a ton. So when we did our calculations of the property, right, we calculated in everything, right? Our principal and interest, little mortgage insurance, because we were going to do a little bit lower than 20% down. We calculated how much the property taxes were and everything like that based on how much the rent was. And we decided, based for our parameters, that this property was going to cash flow well. But one thing that we did not factor into, and not only did we not factor into, we had no idea of the ridiculous cost of, was flood insurance. Another lesson for you. Again, I can't speak for anywhere else outside of the state of Texas. I will say, if you are thinking about investing in the state of Texas, there's a lot of cities and there are a lot of other properties that are not in a flood zone. Flood insurance will fuck up your numbers. Okay? It is expensive. It is expensive. And the thing is, you legally have to get it if you are doing a mortgage, if you are taking out a mortgage on a property. If you're taking out a mortgage on the property, then just the legalese of the lenders and how they get their money from Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, whichever one they get it from, those entities are going to require the lender to require you as the buyer to have flood insurance on your property should it be in a flood zone. And how much is flood insurance? Well, I'll tell you what we were quoted. I don't know how big or how small it gets, but for our property, which is a brand new build, blah, 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 they quoted us somewhere around $246 a month for flood insurance. Now, any of you guys out there know anything about cash flow? I mean, $246 of unexpected expenses essentially kills the deal. It kills it. And so this wasn't presented when we initially got the property. It wasn't brought up at all. When we signed the contract, sellers have to give like seller disclosures. And this was not in the seller disclosure, that it was in a flood thing. So what the builder ended up saying was that it's wrong, that the property was actually mislabeled, and that area was actually mislabeled, and he had been in a constant and continuous and active battle with the city zoning about getting that area, specifically where our property was as well, out of that special flood zone, because it was built a certain way in the elevation, and he had like an elevation certificate and all this stuff, so basically showing that the property wouldn't flood. Well, that doesn't do a whole lot of good for us, and it doesn't do a whole lot of good for the lender. So at this point, we're starting to be like, okay, well, are we in a breach of a contract? Like on the builder's part, not our part. We know we were doing everything right, but we wanted our $1,350 back. That's $1,350. Like for us, that's a lot. Even still to this day, that's a lot of money. And we wanted it back. And the builder started throwing all these crazy ideas out, which at the time, like I said, it was our first time dealing with a property that was in a flood zone. And this is probably we probably only have like one property at this point, one rental property. And we're trying to get a second one. And this is that experience. And so the builder was throwing out some crazy ideas. He was saying things like, we'll draft up a document that says, if the house ever floods, then they'll basically they'll pay us the price of the house plus 10%. Another thing they offered to pay the flood insurance. They offered to pay the premium on the flood insurance for, it's been a few years, but I think he gave us two options. One was on a month-to-month basis because he felt that he was really close to getting the property in that whole area, that whole little development area that he was working in, getting it removed out of the special flood zone. So he's saying that he was going to pay it for like 9 months until it got removed. And then he gave us another option, which was like for an additional $5,000 on the purchase price, he would be willing to pay the premium on the flood insurance indefinitely should his request and all his paperwork that he has submitted get denied. Now, for us at the time, being super, super, super green newbie investors, this sounded like great. I had no problem, paying an extra $5,000 for this builder to be on the hook for paying the flood insurance. Because then at that point, right, that $246 a month that we were quoted, well, that's negated. And so that can go toward our cash flow. Sounds great. But like I said before, we don't have the house. Why? Well, so when we took a step back and really looked at the situation after the fact, it all made sense. But at the time, listen, me and my wife, we were fucking pissed hearing this shit from our lender. We were pissed off. We felt like he didn't want to work with us, and he didn't want us to get our deal. He didn't want us to get this. He didn't want us to continue on our finance. We took it personal. And one big thing, again, this video is full of lessons. One big thing about if you're going to get into investing or any type of investing, period, is don't take anything personally. Don't let your feelings or emotions get involved, because it's going to blind you from what you're actually doing, which is business. All right. So just take that to the bank. But so basically what happened when we presented this to our lender, he said, no dice. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he said that he's going to pay you X amount for the house if it floods. It doesn't matter if he agreed to you, or even if he signs a paper. He's like, because how can they enforce it? Because you have to remember, we're not paying cash or all cash for these properties. You know, we're putting 15 to 20% down. That means that we're getting the money from someone else. And so while the house is an investment to us, we are an investment to the lenders. And so if their investment in us has the potential of getting, you know, flooded out, and the only avenue of recourse is to hold a relatively small builder. We're not talking about D.R. Horton or Meritage here. It was a small builder, you know, a kind of local area builder to that region. And when it was explained at the time, we weren't really seeing it. We were just pissed off that we got told no. But later, it made sense. Basically, we want a mortgage company to, you know, give us $130,000 with a little, essentially, IOU or promissory note from a little small regional builder that if the house undergoes X, Y, and Z, that they'll do X, Y, and Z. And he's like, basically, there's no real way to enforce that. Because who's to say, like, we're getting a 30-year mortgage. Who's to say that that company's even going to be around in 30 years? That the company's even going to be around in 10 years or 5 years? And it's an LLC, so we can only go after the business. But if the business is dissolved, then there's really no recourse. There's really nothing holding the builder in place or making them responsible for actually living up to their promise. Because all they would ever have to do is simply dissolve or go into bankruptcy or X, Y, Z, and they won't be on the hook for it. Because it's really just a letter drafted up, even if it was notarized. If there's no one to go after, there's no way you can get recourse for the situation. And so our mortgage company basically told us that they're not going to lend on it. And so we were left with this. We couldn't do the deal because us paying flood insurance on ourselves, $246 a month, just jacked up all the numbers, and it made the property not cash flow. We couldn't take the builder's, essentially the builder incentive, because the mortgage company wouldn't lend with that deal in place. So we ended up having to back out of the deal. But since we weren't technically denied any financing and there was no earnest money, guess what happened? We got beat. We lost $1,350 and we had no property to show for it. But we learned a lot from that experience. Not a whole bunch though, because we'll get into it again. We went back to this builder. And tried to play it smart. And we lost again. But that's a story for a different day. So hopefully you guys got something out of this. Like I said before, in a previous video, I feel, and from my experience teaching and everything like that, I feel that people get more out of learning from your mistakes instead of learning from all your successes, because your successes are built off of your failures. So we're going to continue to put these out, you know, maybe every other video, every 2 videos, because we've done so many deals. And not all of them have gone well, but we've definitely learned and grown from each one. So if this was helpful to you in any way, drop a comment down below, like, subscribe, all that stuff. We used to have a lot longer spiel at the end. I don't really see the point now. We appreciate you guys' support. We super appreciate the subscribers that have stuck with us over our little 8th month hiatus. And I promise you guys more than anything are going to benefit the most from our growth. So thank you guys. Keep tuning in. Xavier Wells, CRC, tuning out. I'll see you guys on the next one.